The royal palace of Zayara Prime stood tall under a dying orange sky. Once its golden towers touched the clouds, shining with pride and peace. But now smoke rose from the city below, and the air trembled with the sound of distant explosions. The great alien empire was falling apart. Inside the palace, panic spread like fire. The alien guards threw down their weapons and ran through the halls. Advisors screamed orders and servants disappeared into the shadows. Everyone wanted to escape before the enemy fleet arrived, but one figure did not move. A man in dark scratched armor stood still before the throne, a human named Ethan Ward. He was not born here. He was not even one of them. He had once been a prisoner of war, a soldier from Earth taken years ago. Yet somehow, through strange turns of fate, he had become the Queen's personal guard, the only human allowed inside the royal hall. As alien soldiers rushed past him toward the exits, Ethan only tightened his gloves and adjusted his rifle. The steel floor under his boots vibrated with the sound of collapsing defenses. Behind him, the tall crystal doors opened. The Queen of Zayara, Lyra of the Azure Crown, stepped into the throne room. Her long silver hair shimmered under the dim lights, but her proud face showed fear for the first time. "Where are my generals?" she demanded. No one answered. The echo of her voice died in the vast empty hall. She turned and saw Ethan standing alone. You're still here?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Her golden eyes narrowed. "The city is lost. The fleets have fallen. Even my own guards have fled. What are you still doing here, human?" Ethan looked up at her throne. Once a symbol of power, now just a lonely chair surrounded by ruins. "My duty doesn't end when others run," he said simply. Lyra's wings trembled slightly, a sign of confusion and disbelief. "You're a human. My people enslaved yours. Why guard me now?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Because I gave my word." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. The hall shook again as enemy bombs hit the outer shields. The sound of the invasion grew louder. "You will die if you stay," Lyra whispered. Ethan looked at her calmly. "Then I'll die standing." He moved to the central defense console and began to reactivate the palace's old security systems. The holograms flickered, showing enemy ships breaking through the upper atmosphere. His fingers worked fast. "If we seal the lower gates, we can buy some time," he said. Lyra watched in silence. She had seen many warriors in her life, but none like him. Humans were supposed to be weak, emotional, unpredictable, yet this man, scarred and wounded, was the only one who didn't abandon her. When the power lights dimmed again, she asked quietly, "Do all humans have such strange loyalty?" Ethan gave a faint smile. "Not loyalty, Majesty. Just memory. Where I come from, when someone stands beside you in the dark, you don't walk away." The Queen slowly sat on her throne, her silver armor reflecting the flames outside. For the first time in her life, she felt small in her own hall. "Ethan," she said after a pause, "the enemy hates your kind more than mine. If they find you here, they will burn you alive." He shrugged, checking his weapon. "Then they better hurry." The ground trembled harder. From far away came the thunder of plasma cannons. The enemy had entered the city walls. Ethan moved to the huge palace doors and sealed them with his handprint. The metal slabs locked with a deep sound that echoed through the throne room. When he turned back, the Queen was still watching him. Something changed in her eyes. The cold royal distance softened for just a second. "You were captured in war," she said. "You owe me nothing. I owe myself something," he replied. "To finish what I start." A quiet fell between them, broken only by the hum of the failing shields. Ethan checked his ammunition. 3 magazines left. No reinforcements. No escape. He looked at the Queen again. "If they breach the walls, you run for the escape tunnel behind the throne." Lyra frowned. "And you?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I'll make sure they're too busy to notice." For the first time in her reign, the Queen of Zayara had no words. A single human, not bound by blood, not promised gold, was preparing to die for her throne. Outside, the first wave of enemy ships descended, lighting up the night sky like falling stars. The palace trembled under the first blast. Pieces of the ceiling crashed down. Ethan raised his rifle, eyes calm, heartbeat steady. The scanners beeped. Movement detected in the outer corridor. He whispered to himself, "Here they come." And as the door lights turned red, signaling the enemy breach, Ethan stood tall in front of the throne, the last guard of Zayara, In that moment, Queen Lyra realized something she had never understood before. Power wasn't in the crown or the army or the throne. It was in the heart that refused to run. Hook for part 2. Why would a human risk his life for a queen who once ruled over his kind? The sun of Zayara had not risen. The world outside the palace burned under a red sky. Queen Lyra of the Azure Crown sat on her cold throne, her silver eyes fixed on the doors that shook with distant blasts. Every few seconds the ground trembled like the heart of a dying beast. Only one sound echoed through the empty hall. The steady steps of Ethan Ward, the human guard. He checked every defense panel, recharged the palace shields, and replaced power cores in half-broken drones. His armor was covered with dust and smoke, but his hands never stopped moving. Lyra watched him silently. She still couldn't understand this creature, this human. Why would anyone fight for a queen who wasn't even of their kind? Finally she spoke, her voice soft but sharp like ice. You could run. There are escape pods under the palace. Take one, leave. Ethan didn't look at her. He tightened a wire and answered calmly. Not yet. Not yet? She repeated, surprised. You think you can stop an army? He smiled faintly. No, but I can slow them down. Lyra's wings twitched with irritation. Why risk your life for me, human? My kind enslaved yours. I gave orders that put your people in chains. Why not hate me? Ethan paused. The silence between them was heavy. He turned to her and said quietly, Hate is easy. Keeping a promise is harder. The queen tilted her head. A promise? I swore to protect whoever sits on this throne until my service ends. That's you. For a moment the queen didn't know what to say. No alien, no general, no friend had ever spoken to her like that. There was no fear in his tone, no greed. Just truth. Outside, a massive explosion shook the palace walls. The light from the blast flashed through the tall windows, painting the floor red. Lyra stood up, walking toward him. You think you're different, she said. But when death stands before you, even humans run. Ethan looked back at her with calm eyes. Then I'll be the first one who doesn't. Her heart beat faster. For the first time in her long reign, she felt something strange. Respect. She turned away quickly. Foolish human, she murmured. You'll die for nothing. Ethan gave a short laugh. Maybe, but sometimes dying for something is better than living for nothing. Before she could reply, the communication console blinked. A message from the outer gates. The enemy has breached Sector 7. We've lost the eastern walls. Lyra's hands clenched. Her generals were gone. Her army scattered. Even the nobles who had once bowed before her had abandoned the city. She was alone, except for him. Ethan loaded his rifle and stood by the door. They'll come here next, he said. The queen's gaze softened for a moment. You truly mean to stand there? Until the end? Until the end, he said simply. Hours passed like minutes. The palace lights flickered. The wind howled through the broken glass. Ethan sat near the throne, resting for the first time. The queen stepped down from her seat and sat near him, keeping a royal distance. You humans are strange, she said quietly. How so? You fight like you have nothing to lose. Yet your eyes always look like you've lost everything already. Ethan looked down at his scarred gloves. Maybe that's why we fight. Lyra tilted her head, studying him. Were you a soldier on Earth? Yes, he said. Once before the war. And your home? He looked at the burning sky through the window. Gone, like yours will be. If I fail, she went silent. His honesty hit her harder than any insult could. The walls trembled again. Distant screams echoed through the corridors. The enemy was inside the palace. Lyra stood up. If they capture me, they'll use me to control what's left of the Empire. Ethan reloaded his weapon. Then I'll make sure they don't. You'll die, she said sharply. He looked back, calm as ever. Then at least you'll live to rebuild. Something in his words pierced her chest. Not fear, not guilt, but something softer. She had ruled for decades, surrounded by loyal soldiers, advisors, and slaves. But none had ever stayed by her side like this single human. She turned away quickly, hiding the tremor in her voice. You're insane, Ethan Ward. He gave a tired grin. That's what they said when I joined your guard. As the final alarm blared through the hall, he took position in front of the throne. The great doors began to glow, plasma cutters slicing through the metal from the other side. Lyra walked closer, her voice low. Human, He turned slightly, eyes focused on the door. "If you fall," she said, "I will not run." Ethan looked back, meeting her eyes for a moment. "Then, Your Majesty, let's make them regret coming here." The doors began to crack. Sparks flew across the room. The sound of alien war cries echoed through the hall. Lyra's heartbeat raced. Ethan's stance didn't move an inch. Lyra's heartbeat raced. Ethan's stance didn't move an inch. In that single moment, the Queen finally believed. Not in empires, not in bloodlines, but in one human's unshakable courage. And when the doors burst open, the battle for the throne of Zayara truly began. Hook for Part 3. Can one human guard protect the Queen when the enemy floods the palace from all sides? The night fell heavy over the royal city. Flames climbed high, painting the clouds red. The palace stood like a lonely mountain surrounded by storms. Inside, the once bright halls of Zayara Prime now echoed with distant gunfire and falling metal. Ethan Ward stood before the Queen's throne, rifle in hand, his armor cracked and blackened by smoke. Every breath came out slow and rough. Across from him, Queen Lyra watched in silence. The air between them was thick with the smell of burning plasma and the hum of dying generators. The enemy had entered the palace. The scanners flashed red on the defense. Console. Multiple life forms. Detected. Hundreds, maybe thousands, Ethan. Turned toward Lyra. "They're inside," he said quietly. "Every corridor. Every gate." Lyra's silver eyes didn't blink. "Then this is where it ends," Ethan nodded once. "Yes, but not for you." He moved fast, activating the last of the palace's auto turrets. Blue light spread across the floor as ancient defense systems woke for the final time. The palace trembled as machines unfolded from the walls, old weapons from forgotten wars. Lyra watched as the human worked, her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't name. Every move he made, every decision was not for glory or survival. It was for her, for a promise. Moments later, the power grid flickered. The lights went out. The palace was swallowed by darkness. Only the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. The enemy coming closer, step by step. Ethan switched on the night vision in his helmet. The world turned green. "Stay behind the throne," he whispered. The Queen hesitated, pride fighting against fear. But something in his voice made her obey. She stepped back, her gown brushing the shattered glass. Then came the first explosion. The enemy blasted open the main hall doors, filling the air with smoke and fire. Through the haze, shadowy figures poured in. Armored invaders with glowing red eyes, weapons raised. Ethan fired first. His rifle's plasma bolts cut through the dark like lightning. 1, 2, 3 enemies fell. The rest scattered, returning fire. He moved with the calm rhythm of a soldier who had fought too many battles. His body bled, but his hands were steady. The Queen crouched behind the throne, her heart pounding. The noise was deafening. Blasts, screams, the crash of collapsing stone. But through it all, she could hear Ethan's voice shouting commands to no one, as if his fallen squad still fought beside him. Left flank. Cover fire, move! He was alone. Yet he fought like an army. Minutes passed like hours. The first wave fell, then the second. The floor was covered with dust and broken armor. Ethan leaned against a pillar, catching his breath. His helmet visor was cracked. One eye was bleeding. Lyra rose slowly, stepping out from behind the throne. "You're hurt," she said. He gave a small grin. "You should see them." But before either could speak again, the palace went silent. No footsteps. No gunfire. Nothing. Just silence. It was worse than noise. It was the sound of something waiting. Ethan lifted his rifle, eyes scanning the hall. "They've stopped," he said under his breath. The Queen looked around nervously. "Why?" He shook his head. "They're regrouping, planning something bigger." A cold wind blew through the broken windows. Somewhere in the distance, metal scraped against stone. The silence stretched longer, deeper, until even their own breathing sounded too loud. Then from the shadows above the throne came a soft hiss, the sound of something crawling. Ethan aimed up fast. "Down!" he shouted. A massive alien creature dropped from the ceiling, a war beast with mechanical limbs and glowing red veins. It roared, shaking the hall. Ethan fired, but the creature charged, smashing through the pillars. Lyra screamed as debris fell around them. Ethan rolled to his feet, firing again and again until the weapon overheated. The beast lunged. Ethan pulled his sidearm, aimed straight at its core. and shot a plasma grenade into its chest. The explosion threw him across the room. When the smoke cleared, the creature was down in a burning mass of metal and flesh. But Ethan didn't move. His armor was shattered. His pulse slowed. Lyra ran to him, kneeling by his side. "Ethan, can you hear me?" He coughed, his voice faint but calm. "Still breathing, Your Majesty." Her hands trembled as she pressed against his wound. "Why do you keep doing this?" "You could have escaped. You could have lived." He smiled weakly. "Because you didn't run either." For a moment, they just looked at each other, human and alien, guard and queen, surrounded by the ruins of a dying empire. Then the palace lights flickered back on, one by one. The silence broke again, hundreds of footsteps approaching. The enemy wasn't finished. Lyra's voice cracked. "They're coming again." Ethan forced himself up, leaning on his weapon. "Then we fight again." The queen stood beside him this time, her royal fear gone. She reached for a fallen sword, gripping it tightly. When the doors shook once more, Ethan gave a faint smile. "Welcome to the last stand." And as the enemy's roar filled the palace once more, the two of them stood shoulder to shoulder, a human and a queen, guarding the throne together as the siege continued under the red sky. Hook for Part 4. But not everyone inside the palace was loyal. A betrayal was waiting in the dark. The fires of war still burned outside the shattered windows of the royal palace. The once proud walls of Zayara Prime were now scarred and blackened. Smoke drifted through every corridor, and the air smelled of plasma and ash. Inside the throne room, Ethan Ward stood with his rifle at the ready. His armor was cracked, his shoulder bleeding through torn metal. Beside him, Queen Lyra held a fallen sword in her hand, its blade glowing faintly with blue light. They had survived wave after wave of invaders. The hall was filled with broken machines, scattered weapons, and silence. The silence after death. Ethan wiped the sweat from his brow. "That's the last of them," he muttered. Lyra took a deep breath. For now. For a brief moment, it felt like the storm had passed. The alarms had stopped. The palace lights flickered back to life, weak but steady. Ethan sat near a collapsed pillar, trying to repair the power cell of his gun. "If we're lucky," he said, "the outer gates might hold for another hour." Lyra looked around the ruined hall, her throne cracked, her banners torn, her people gone. "Luck has never been kind to me," she whispered. But before Ethan could answer, a faint echo came from the corridor. Footsteps. He aimed his weapon instantly. "Stay behind me," he said. From the smoke stepped a tall alien figure dressed in elegant black armor, carrying the royal insignia. His face was calm, his voice smooth. "Peace, my queen," he said. "It's me, Lord Vesker, your High Chancellor." Lyra's expression changed from fear to relief. "Vesker, you're alive." Ethan kept his weapon raised. Something about the man's tone didn't sit right. Too calm, too sure. Vesker bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I came through the hidden tunnels. The enemy is closing in from the west. We must leave now." Ethan frowned. "Leave through where?" "The Queen's escape pod beneath the hall," Vesker replied smoothly. "There's still time." But Lyra shook her head. "I will not abandon my throne." Vesker smiled faintly. "Then let me protect you." Ethan didn't lower his weapon. His instincts screamed danger. "Funny," he said. "None of the other guards made it through those tunnels." Vesker turned to him, eyes cold. "You question me, human?" "Every second," Ethan said flatly. Lyra looked between them, confusion growing. "Enough, we don't have time for this." But Ethan took a slow step forward, rifle steady. "Your armor," he said, voice low. "It's clean. No burns, no dust. You didn't fight your way in here. You walked." For the first time, Vesker's calm mask cracked. His hand twitched, Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Tell me the truth, Chancellor. Who sent you?" The silence stretched. And then the flash of betrayal. Vesker drew his blaster and fired. The shot hit Ethan's chest plate, sending him crashing backward. The sound echoed through the throne room like thunder. Lyra screamed, "No!" Before she could move, Vesker turned his weapon on her. "The throne belongs to those strong enough to keep it," he said coldly. "You've ruled long enough." Ethan coughed, blood on his lips, struggling to stand. "You traitor!" Vesker smirked. "You humans never learn when to die." But before he could fire again, Ethan reached for his sidearm and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt struck Vesker's shoulder, spinning him around. He screamed in pain, dropping his weapon. Lyra grabbed her sword and rushed forward, fury blazing in her eyes. She slashed, but Vesker caught her wrist, throwing her to the ground. Ethan forced himself up, each step agony. His armor sparked, his breathing shallow. Vesker turned, sneering. "You think one broken soldier can stop me?" Ethan raised his rifle with shaking hands. "I don't need to stop you," he said. "I just need to slow you down." He fired. The shot hit Vesker square in the chest. The traitor fell backward, crashing into the cracked throne. Smoke filled the air again. Lyra crawled toward Ethan, tears burning her eyes. "You're hurt badly," she whispered. He gave a weak smile. "Just a scratch." But when she touched his armor, her hands came away red. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why protect me after everything my people did to yours?" Ethan looked at her through the cracked visor. "Because I don't fight for a crown," he said. "I fight for a promise, and for the person who still keeps it." Lyra's eyes filled with emotion. "Ethan." But before she could say more, the sound of marching boots echoed again. The enemy had breached the final gates. Vesker, still alive but bleeding, laughed weakly. "You can't win, human. They'll bury you both." Ethan turned to the Queen. "Get to the escape chamber now." "And you?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Someone has to lock the door." The Queen's heart twisted. She didn't want to go, but for the first time she understood the weight of his words. Loyalty wasn't chains. It was choice. As she stepped toward the tunnel beneath the throne, she looked back. Ethan was standing again, gun raised, guarding the room one last time. The doors began to shake with the next attack. "Ethan," she called. He turned his head slightly. "Go, Your Majesty." And with that, the last human on Ziyara faced the coming storm alone, a bleeding soldier guarding a throne of broken light, while the Empire's own betrayed it from within. Outside, thunder rolled through the sky as the next wave approached. The Queen whispered his name once more, before disappearing into the shadows below. Hook for Part 5. As the Queen hides beneath the palace, will Ethan survive the storm above, or will the throne fall with him? The tunnels beneath the royal palace of Ziyara were dark, cold, and ancient, carved long before the Queen was born. Queen Lyra moved through the narrow passage, her heart pounding. Every step echoed like thunder in her ears. Behind her, the air trembled with distant explosions. She wanted to go faster, but something inside her stopped her feet. She could still hear him, Ethan Ward, the human soldier, the last guard, fighting above her. Every sound of plasma fire felt like a knife to her chest. She reached a crossway in the tunnels and froze. The royal escape pod stood ready, glowing faint blue in the darkness. Its door was open. She could step inside and leave, disappear into the stars, and live. But her hands didn't move. Her eyes turned upward toward the ceiling. "I can't," she whispered. Not while he's still up there. For the first time, the Queen who ruled galaxies didn't want to escape. Above her, the throne room was a battlefield of fire. Ethan stood alone, surrounded by fallen enemies. Smoke coiled around him like ghosts. His armor flickered with dying energy, and his body ached with every breath. The sound of boots returned, hundreds of them. The next wave was coming. He looked at the broken throne, the shattered floor, and whispered to himself, "Just a little longer." Then his radio crackled, static, then her voice. "Ethan," Lyra said softly. "Are you alive?" He smiled faintly, still standing. "You're wounded," she said. "Come down. The pod is ready." He shook his head, even though she couldn't see him. "If I leave, they'll follow. You won't make it out." There was a pause, then her voice, sharp and trembling. "You've done enough, human. You've given more than any of my own kind." Ethan reloaded his weapon slowly. "Doesn't matter." "I'm not finished." "Why?" she demanded. "Why keep fighting when it's hopeless?" Ethan closed his eyes for a second. His mind flashed back, his planet burning, his family lost. His commander's last words, "Protect the innocent, even if the world forgets you. Because someone once believed I could be more than a weapon," he said softly. "Now it's my turn to prove them right." Then he cut the connection and faced the throne room doors. The enemy entered like a flood, armored soldiers and war machines breaking through the last barricade. Their leader, a tall alien in crimson armor, stepped forward, his voice echoing through the smoke. "Where is the Queen?" he demanded. Ethan raised his weapon. "Not here," the warlord laughed. "You're only one man." Ethan smiled, bleeding from the corner of his mouth. That's one more than you deserve. The battle that followed shook the palace to its core. Plasma bolts lit the room in flashes of blue and red. Ethan fought with every last drop of strength. His armor cracked, his helmet shattered, but he never fell. He used every weapon left, drones, turrets, even pieces of broken machinery as shields. Each time an enemy fell, two more took their place. Finally, the warlord himself charged forward, his sword glowing with energy. He struck, slicing through Ethan's rifle. Sparks flew. Ethan stumbled back, grabbing a fallen spear. The two clashed again, and blade against blade, human against alien. Why protect her? The warlord hissed. She's not your queen. Ethan gritted his teeth. She became one the moment everyone else left. With a final roar, the warlord drove his sword into Ethan's chest, but the human caught it with his hands, forcing it back, shouting through the pain. Then he twisted, ramming the spear straight into the warlord's core. Both fell to the ground. The hall went quiet. Only the fire crackled. Ethan lay there, breathing slowly, staring at the cracked ceiling. Lyra, he whispered. Deep underground, Lyra felt it, a sudden stillness. No more explosions. No more gunfire, only silence. Her heart stopped. She turned and ran back through the tunnels, ignoring the dust and smoke. She climbed broken stairs, crawled through debris, and finally reached the throne room again. The sight froze her in place. Ethan was on the floor, his armor dark and burned. Around him lay the bodies of those who came to kill her. The throne behind him still stood, untouched. Lyra dropped to her knees beside him, her voice trembling. Ethan, please, look at me. His eyes fluttered open. He smiled weakly. You're still here. She held his hand tightly. You fool. I told you to escape. I don't run, he whispered. Not from my duty. Tears filled her eyes. Something she thought she'd forgotten how to feel. You're not my guard anymore, she said. You're my friend, he smiled faintly. That's nice to hear, finally. His voice grew weaker. The lights above them dimmed. Lyra pressed a glowing crystal from her crown to his chest, the royal healing core forbidden to be used on anyone but the queen herself. Stay with me, she said fiercely. I commanded. The crystal's light spread through his armor, sealing wounds, restoring breath. The energy was ancient and costly. Ethan gasped, the light flooding back into his eyes. What did you do? Lyra smiled softly, exhausted. Return the favor. She stood, her body weak, her power fading from using the crystal. But her voice was steady. You taught me what loyalty means, Ethan Ward. Now it's my turn to fight. She picked up his broken rifle and turned toward the entrance where more enemies gathered outside. Her silver armor glowed faintly, her crown cracked but shining. The Queen of Zayara raised the weapon and said coldly, Come and claim your throne, if you can. The palace trembled like a dying heart. Smoke rolled across the shattered marble floor, glowing orange from fires burning in every corridor. Ethan Ward pushed himself up slowly. His body screamed with pain, but the Queen's healing crystal had done its work. Enough to keep him breathing. Enough to keep him fighting. Beside him, Queen Lyra stood tall, her armor cracked, her crown dim. In her hands, she still held his broken rifle, now fused to alien metal. Outside, thunder shook the skies. The enemy fleet was regrouping for one last strike. Lyra looked toward the ruined gates. They will not stop, she said. Ethan wiped blood from his mouth. Neither will I. For the first time, she smiled. Small, tired, real. You are impossible. Humans usually are. A deep rumble cut through their words. The temperature dropped. The lights flickered blue, then black. From the ceiling, dust fell like ash. Lyra froze. No, she whispered. What is it? Ethan asked, tightening his grip on the spear. They've sent him. Who? The warlord of Ashen Void, she said. The destroyer of worlds. He burned my sister's empire. He will not take prisoners. Ethan's jaw set. Then let's give him a reason to remember Zayara. Moments later, the palace doors exploded inward. The blast threw fire and shards of crystal into the air. Through the smoke stepped a giant figure, armor like molten rock, eyes burning white, voice heavy as thunder. So, the warlord growled. The queen hides behind a human toy. Ethan moved forward, placing himself between Lyra and the monster. I'm not her toy, he said quietly. I'm her guard. The warlord laughed, the sound echoing like an avalanche. One man against a god? Ethan's chest plate began to hum, a dull vibration rising from the core beneath his armor. Lyra realized what he was doing. "Ethan," she said sharply, "stop. That's a fusion core. It will kill you." He looked back, eyes calm. "If that's what it takes." She shook her head, stepping closer. "No, there must be another way." He gave her a gentle look. "Your Majesty, every world needs someone who stands their ground, even if they don't walk away." The warlord raised his blade, taller than a man. "Enough talking." The floor cracked as he charged. Ethan met him head-on. Metal clashed, fire burst. The blast shook the throne room apart. The warlord's sword struck again and again, each blow stronger than the last, but the human didn't fall. "Why do you fight?" The giant roared. "You are nothing." Ethan's voice was steady. "Then you should have nothing to fear." He slammed the spear into the warlord's armor, sparks flying. The creature stumbled. Lyra raised her hand, summoning a burst of blue lightning from the throne's core. The energy hit the warlord, forcing him back, howling. "Now!" she cried. Ethan ripped open his armor's chest plate, revealing the fusion cell glowing white-hot. Lyra's eyes widened. "Ethan, don't!" He turned toward her, smiling through the light. "A promise is a promise." He pressed the activation switch. The explosion was pure light. It swallowed everything: sound, sight, time. When the light faded, the great hall was silent. The warlord's armor lay split in half, smoking. The walls were gone, replaced by a crater that opened to the burning sky. Lyra lay among the ruins, her body weak but alive. She crawled toward the center where Ethan had stood. There was nothing left, only scorched metal and the faint hum of energy. Tears blurred her vision. No, you can't." But as she reached for the melted fragments of his armor, a soft blue glow shimmered across the floor. The palace defense system, long dead, was coming back online. A voice spoke through the comm channel, low and calm. "System reactivation, Guardian protocol engaged." Lyra froze. That voice, it was him. "Ethan," she whispered. The AI lights flared brighter. "Guardian active. Primary directive, protect the Queen, defend the throne." Her heart stopped. He wasn't gone. The fusion core hadn't destroyed him. It had fused his mind with the palace's central defense AI. She looked around as walls reformed, drones activated, shields rose from the ashes. The palace was alive again, alive with him. "Ethan," she said softly, tears glimmering. "What have you done?" "Kept my oath," the voice replied. "Told you I don't run." The Queen sank to her knees, both sorrow and awe filling her chest. "You gave up your body." "Doesn't matter," he said. "I can still see you safe." "That's enough." She looked up at the flickering lights above. "Will I ever see you again?" "Every time you walk this hall," he answered. "You'll hear me in the walls." The wind blew through the broken ceiling, carrying the smoke away. Lyra stood slowly, gazing at the ruined throne surrounded by new light. The human was gone, yet his presence filled every corner of her world. Under her breath, she whispered, "Then this throne shall never fall. Not while you guard it." The dawn over Ziyara Prime was silent. The war was over. At least that's what the stars whispered. The skies that once burned red were now calm, filled with drifting ash and faint golden light. The palace of the Queen stood half-ruined, yet alive. Its walls glowed softly with a strange blue energy, like the breath of something reborn. The war had taken almost everything, but something, or someone, remained. Queen Lyra walked slowly through the throne hall. Her steps echoed against the metal floor, now repaired with strange living light. Every wall hummed faintly. The air was different, warm, aware. She stopped in front of the throne, once cracked and blackened, now shining again. But it wasn't the light that caught her breath. It was the voice. "Good morning, Your Majesty." Her heart jumped. She turned slowly. The voice came from everywhere, soft, steady, familiar. "Ethan," she whispered. "Present and operational," the voice replied gently. She smiled through tears. "You sound different." "Less human, maybe," he said, his tone calm. "But I still keep watch." She placed her hand on the side wall. The light beneath her palm pulsed as if answering her touch. She could feel him, not just in sound, but through the living circuits that ran across the palace. His presence was in every light, every gate, every breath of air that touched the throne. "You became the palace," she said softly. "You gave your soul to stone and steel. I gave it to my promise, Ethan replied. As long as this throne stands, you'll never be alone. Outside the palace, rebuilding had begun. Survivors of the war, humans, aliens, traitors, soldiers, worked side by side. Word of the battle had spread across the galaxy. They spoke of the human guard who refused to flee, who fought until his body burned away, and who now guarded the queen even in death. Some called him a myth. Others called him a machine. But among the stars, his name carried a single truth. Humans never break their oath. Weeks passed. The palace changed. It grew smarter, faster, more alive. Ethan's consciousness expanded through the planetary network. He could see the ships in orbit, the factories rebuilding, the gardens blooming again. Yet every night his focus returned to one place, the throne. To her, Queen Lyra often spoke to him when the halls were quiet. "You never sleep now," she said one evening. "Doesn't it tire you?" "I don't feel tired anymore," Ethan answered. "I only feel aware." She sat beside the throne, her gaze distant. "You gave up everything, your body, your life, your world. All for mine. Why?" The walls flickered gently. "Because I saw something worth saving," he said. "You," her eyes softened. "I never believed a human could change me, but you did. You changed yourself," he said. "I just stood my ground. But peace never lasts forever." One night, alarms echoed across the palace. Lyra ran to the command chamber as red lights flared. "Unidentified fleet detected," Ethan said. "Origin unknown." Approaching at light speed, her heart froze. "Another invasion?" "Not the same kind," Ethan replied. "They're searching for something," she frowned. "For me?" A pause. "No," he said quietly. "For me." Through the palace sensors, images flickered across the screens. Ships bearing human insignia, old Earth symbols. "They've come from your world," Lyra whispered. "They're looking for you." "Or for what I've become," Ethan said. "A human mind fused with alien technology. They'll want to take it apart." The Queen gripped the rail tightly. "Then we'll fight again, together." "No," Ethan said. "Not this time, Ethan. If they see me as a weapon, I'll make them see me as a warning instead." The palace lights dimmed as Ethan began to reroute power. Lyra could feel his presence growing stronger, spreading beyond the planet. "You once said your empire fell because you forgot what loyalty meant," he said. "Let the galaxy remember now. One life, one promise, one truth." The fleet appeared in the skies above Ziyara. Their scanners locked onto the palace. Lyra's voice shook. "What will you do?" "Exactly what I was built for," Ethan said, his tone calm. "Guard the throne." And then, the skies lit up again. From the heart of the palace, beams of light surged upward, wrapping around the planet like wings. Every weapon, every shield, every satellite responded to his command. The new power of Ziyara, the power of one human spirit, pushed back the fleet until it vanished into the void. When it was over, silence returned. The planet was safe once more. Days later, Lyra stood again before the throne. "You're still here," she said softly. "Told you," he replied. "I don't run," she smiled, tears in her eyes. "What will you do now, Guardian?" "Keep watching," he said, "until your stars fade, and even after." The Queen placed her crown on the throne beside her and whispered, "Then let the galaxy remember. The last throne of Ziyara was guarded by a human who never left." And as the lights dimmed and the stars shone over the silent world, a gentle voice echoed through the hall, calm, eternal, unbroken. "Guardian online. The Queen is safe.